All right, Bashers, here we go. This is the Kraton EXB version 2 review. Now, we did the first look video and it was a fun video to do, but then I got sent out of town. And keep in mind, guys, that my job does send me out of town, and when I'm gone, I can't do anything about this. So staying regular with the channel is a super difficult challenge at times. Still, in order to have these beautiful things, I have to go out and hold that job down because YouTube doesn't pay all that much. So we have to foot the bill for most of this stuff, and pretty much all is what that means. Still, at the same time, our ability to help the community is what this is all about, and it makes it all worth it. Still, being able to look at the new tech is also pretty cool. One thing I did like about this, and we'll get this out of the way right up front, is right here. I was so excited for this car because it comes factory with the aluminum diff housings. Very cool tech indeed. Still, we got to get through our 4 questions in this one, and the 4 questions are: is it fun? Is it durable? Is it worth the money? And what's the total points here at the channel? This should be pretty informative. We're going to compare this to the 2 we have on the bench right now. On the bench, we have the Italian EXB and the Kraton version 1 EXB, and they're modified. And we're going to go over what they are, what this is, and then we're going to make our recommendations for what you should change to keep this thing up and running in a much more easy fashion than it comes out of the box. Is it perfect? No, it's not. And we'll explain why. Check this out. All right, so as you can see on the bench, we've got them all lined up there, and let's talk about performance first. And the EXB line has been plagued with certain problems with the suspension locking up in the front when the drive axles pop out, and Arrma tried to do something to alleviate that issue, and it caused another problem. But performance-wise, this one's the version 1, this is the version 2, and pretty much the main difference on those is the body. It's got some extra color on the body, and that's pretty much it. It still has a lot of the basic components of the EXB version 1, but it does have a couple of changes. Now, performance for performance, even when the Kraton version 1 was out of the box, it was pretty easy to control, but it was kind of, with the wheelbase that it has, it's a lot more sketchy than, say, up on the top there, you can see the Big Rock. That's the Big Rock 6S, and it's a long wheelbase vehicle, and it's a lot more planted. It runs a lot more controllable, but still, it's in how you set them up. We've got a modified Outcast, and it controls and handles exceptionally well, too. It's all in how you set things up, but out of the box, that's what we're rating these by. Out of the box, these two are really equal. So the version 1 and version 2 straight out of the box are pretty equal for performance, but at the same time, the Italian, it also had the front arm lockup problem. So you'd take a small jump, land on the front end, it would lock the front wheels up, and it would be stuck to the ground. You had to take a wrench to it, loosen things up to get the drive axles back in place. And the reason for that was, in the original differentials, you had these outdrive cups, and if you can see this, I'll get you a close-up of this, but they're concaved right here on the edges, and that right there is one major change, because this is the original ones, and the axles would actually get stuck in these cups, but the cups allowed the axles to swivel a little further without binding, and these actually worked really well. You just had to do some modifications to the arms to get them to work. On the EXB version 2, they have collars here, and these collars go most of the way around, and if you'll notice, it's flat against the top here, so it's straight across without those little curves in there. And unfortunately, that was the wrong way to go, because it causes bindings when the arms flex a little too far, and it causes breakage like this. And a lot of people are having issues with that. And what happens is when the arms flex farther than they're supposed to, and under impact, that can happen easily, it can shatter these. And this wasn't even a big jump, guys. This was not very far off the ground at all, and it shattered that differential. So that's a problem that we're going to have to address in a later video. Right now, that was a failing in the car from the factory, and we took a look at the brake, and the brake is clean. There wasn't any bad material in there. It just snapped it off nice and neat, just like that, and that's unfortunate. One way to deal with that, when the arms would flex too far, it would pop the drive axle out. And when it popped it out, it could land in those concavities on the original diff, so they tried to eliminate those. But in eliminating those, they created a little extra binding in there, which actually caused bigger problems in the long run. So thumbs up to Arrma for giving it a shot, but they still missed the mark a little bit. What we wound up doing is swapping out the arms for an aftermarket arm, and we use the ones from RPM. It can be the version 5 Kraton or the version 4. They both fit in the front end. I recommend the version 5 ones for this vehicle in particular, but we have version 4s on the version 1 of the Kratons, and they work just fine. On the front end, it's a nice, easy replacement. Even with the version 5s, they go right on, and you can set your drip screws the way you want to, no problems. That works pretty well for a remedy for that, but at the same time, out of the box, it is a weak point. And for performance, the Italian out of the box is capable of 70 miles an hour with the optional gearing, and it's got a lot lighter tires. These are more of a race style tire versus the big tires that are on the other ones, and it keeps it more controllable under power. You can still get it on its rear wheels. That's not a big issue. But as long as this thing is, it really does work really well, and it's a lot more controllable, but it doesn't have the dig and grunt that the bigger tires have on the Kraton. So it's a trade-off. Do you want the speed, or do you want to be able to mob through all kinds of stuff? That's the real difference. Performance for performance, this is the higher performance vehicle, but as far as the two Kratons go, they're really equal. So let's move on to the running gear between the two. With the Kraton version 1 and the Kraton version 2, they have some different running gear in there, and we wound up putting the BLX 185 in the first one, and keep in mind the first one came as a roller, so we got to select what went in it. We still put the stock running gear, so we put a BLX 185, we put a 2050 motor in it, and that gave it the standard drive. We also put the stock gearing in it, so it runs just like anything out of the box would. The second one came with all the electronics in it, and it does have the Spectrum 150 version 2 speed control, and it did have the update in it, so we did not have a power failure. That worked pretty good. We haven't had the world's greatest luck with the Spectrum stuff. I'm really a fan of the BLX 185 stuff. BLX makes some pretty good gear, and we've had exceptionally good luck with it. We've blown some bearings, wiped out a couple of motors, and most of that was due to maintenance. When you take a look at when you lube things up on your bearings and whatnot, when you lube the bearings, most people look at the wheel bearings and the differential bearings, and no one really takes into account the bearings in the motor. The backside is sealed, but the one up front by the pinion is not, and you can get some lube in that. And I recommend something that will dry up a little bit and not hold on to the moisture, because that definitely hangs on to dust and dirt and the debris that comes off the pinion and spur gear as they have friction, and that can get in there and destroy the bearings. Most of the time when you lose a motor, unless you're geared too high and causing heat problems, it's because we don't maintain that bearing. It's a small one right there, and most people overlook it. You definitely want to get some lube on that and maintain that, because when you lose a bearing there, the motor goes down and there's nothing you can do about it. So out of the box, we did have a problem with the gearing as well, and it's exceptionally noisy. Something is incorrect here. Either it's in the spur gear or the pinion, but this is really loud, and when we put it on the bench and spun it up, it was painful to the ears. We did not change the gears, and it did hold up. but it is obnoxious to listen to, so something's wrong with either the pinion or the spur gear, and we'll change that later. But out of the box, it definitely had a problem with that, and it made a lot of noise, and it was uncomfortable at best of times. It was uncomfortable to listen to. Once you got it outside, it was less obvious, but if you spun it up indoors, it was way louder than anything else in the studio, and it definitely brought some concerns. Still, we run these as they come out of the box, so we ran it that way, and so far it has held up. And like I said at the beginning of the video, we did have to replace that differential, and of course that's this one. And there's a video for that. That will be in the description down below as to how to get to that. We show you how to take it all apart and rebuild it and put it back together. And basically what we wound up doing is buying a new one, because right now the parts for those are hard to get. It was exceptionally hard to get a hold of them, but I could get a hold of the whole differential, and it was a lot more expensive doing it that way, but it does leave me some parts that I can use if one goes down again. So you're going to have a little issue with that, at least until supply and demand equals out and they become available more readily. Right now it's a little difficult to get the drive cups, but we did manage to get it repaired, and we show you how to do that. So let's move on to handling for a few minutes here and just sort of cover what this thing is. Out of the box, I think my personal opinion here is the differential fluid in the center, and this one, it does have the limited slip differential in the middle only. It doesn't have limited slip in the front or the rear. It's only in the center. And it's a little bit stiff in my opinion. It does bring the front wheels up a lot. If you're into stunting, that's the way to go. And a lot of people like to put really thick stuff in the middle differential, and it gets a lot more grunt to the rear wheels. It does pour more power back there, and it does wear on the parts a bit more, but at the same time, it gets that stuntability. It brings the front wheels up really easy. It gives you even drive between front and rear when you're trying to get off of the ramp and stuff. So it has its advantages, but it also has its detriment. And what I mean by that is when you're trying to pin a hole shot, and you and your buddy take off, if you can't keep the front wheels on the ground, you can't win the race. You look cool, but you can't win the race when you can't keep the front wheels on the ground. So a little lighter fluid, in my opinion, would make this handle better. It was real hoppy as far as that goes. It was real easy to get the front wheels up, and part of that's the tires, and that's because of the mass in those tires. If I left the same fluid in the center differential and just put the Italian tires on it, it would be a lot more manageable because there's less mass in the tires, giving you that better control. But at the same time, the big tires handle the rough terrain better, so it's a balance you'll have to strike for yourself. As far as the running gear of the car goes, it has the Spectrum 150 version 2 in it. It also has the Spectrum 2050 motor in it, and that's pretty much standard for the situation, the way things run like that. One thing that we did have problems with in a lot of these RCs is if you don't pay attention to the bearings, and we touched on that for the motor. But what we seem to forget sometimes is if you get in any kind of water whatsoever, even though these are supposed to be sealed bearings, they're not completely sealed. So you can get lube in there, you can get water in there. And if you get water in there, if you use water to clean them, any of that stuff, it will create corrosion in there if you don't maintain your stuff correctly. And that can burn things out. We've had problems with the center differentials in these things because you forget to lube those bearings, the bearing goes down. As soon as they start to work in that corrosion, it creates heat. Heat can melt plastic. You can have all kinds of problems, be it the outdrive units, be it at the center differential, be it anywhere in the car. Always remember to lubricate all your bearings good, especially before and after. So before you go out and run, lube everything up, make sure it's nice and wet, take the tires off, get everything good to go. And if we use a silicone-based lubricant, and that stuff, it goes on wet, washes out any debris, it stops any kind of rust, and then it dries out so it does not attract dust, and that's good stuff. And this is what we use here, because you guys do want to know about this. We use Blaster, and this stuff works really well. You can put it on just about anything. We use it on the whole car once we get it washed. We hit the chassis with it, we hit all the parts with it. We even spray it over the body and wipe it down, and it makes everything look brand new. This stuff is like magic in a can. Make sure you get this kind, because we have some other stuff that dries white and it stains what you have. This stuff dries clear and you'll hardly notice that it's on there. So that's one good way to make sure that you take good care of things, because part of your durability is maintaining your vehicle properly so it will hold up over time. Okay, all that being said, let's take a brief look at some of the footage that we have. We're not going to run a big long one on this one. We're just going to keep this one nice and short as far as the running footage goes, because we ran it good, we ran it long and all that, but we do wind up putting an awful lot of footage in here, and if you guys like to see the long footage, please get in the comments and let us know and we'll add to that. But we're running a short one on this one to see how it works, and I want your opinion to let me know whether you like the long montages of the running footage. And of course, this is an unboxing and a review video, so there will be no music in this. It's just the run to it. And we're going to just take a short little bit and show you how it handles, and then we'll get right back on with our determination and the 4 questions. Oh, back those brakes off a little bit. All right, so there's the running footage, and we kept it short and sweet as promised. Still, this is the version 1, and if you haven't seen the videos on this one, we show you exactly what we did to it, and we tell you all about the upgrades and everything. This one has the aluminum mount drives, has the RPM arms on it. This has the version 4 RPM arms on it, and this normally would take the version 5s. We did some modification. At the time, the RPM version 5 arms were unavailable, so we made these work, and they work fantastic. Once we got this on here, and let me point one thing out on this, if you put them in the back, you don't get quite the elevation in the back. It squats it a little bit. I find that to not be a problem. Everything works out okay, but in the front here, every time we'd land it with the stock arms, it would just bury out and it would pop the drive axles out and everything. But once we switched it to the RPM ones, that problem simply went away, and that was the end of it. One of the nice upgrades that I like on this is, and you can't get these anymore, guys, is this wheelie bar. That saves that rear wing mount more than you could possibly know. And if you haven't seen those videos for this one, check this one out, because if you already have one, the upgrades are pretty inexpensive and they're not too hard to do to get yours to be pretty much bulletproof for the most part. The only part of durability you can't help is the driver. If you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna buy parts until you figure it out. It's just part of the hobby. That's what's necessary. Knowing when to be on the throttle and when not to be on the throttle, that's all part of it. So you can only help so much, but if you don't drive it correctly, you're still gonna have problems. At the same time, the version 2 is this one. And this one is pretty much the same thing inside, but it's got a couple of differences that I want to show you. And one of the main differences here is this tower-to-tower brace right here locks down in the middle, so it actually connects to the center differential housing, which gives it a little more rigidity, should help with keeping that chassis nice and straight. This does have all the 7075 stuff in it, so all the red equipment inside, the shock towers, the chassis braces, all that is the really good aluminum, including the chassis. So that's the big advantage to this one. It does have the aluminum diff housings, which is a really good thing as well. The drivetrain is good, but I'm really disappointed in the gearing, because the gearing is terrible on this one. And I don't know if I probably just got a bad one, maybe a mismanufactured pinion or something, but what came in the box was faulty, and it's hard on the ears really bad. It's not going to last very long. It lasted through all the tests, and we tested it pretty good, and it lasted through all the tests, so that was good. Still, it did break the front differential cup, and that is a problem. The rest of it held up pretty good. One nice thing about this one though is, since we can't get that T-Bone Racing wheelie bar for this one, and we used the last one we have in stock, so I don't have another one here to put on it, this one has a different rear wing mount, and this one has 4 mounting points, and it connects down to that aluminum diff housing, and that should help a lot. We haven't had any failings in this, and we tested it pretty good. We cartwheeled it a few times, landed it on the wing a few times. We do this kind of stuff to make sure we test everything. So we landed on the nose, we landed on the wing, we came down a little tough a few times, and we did that on purpose to make sure that we've tested it. And it held up pretty good. Overall, it's a pretty tough truck. At the same time, it drives like your average Kraton does. So whether you have a version 4 standard, like an RTR, or a version 5 or anything like that, they all drive about the same. I'm not a fan of how the steering works on this one. However, the steering did not bind up and slow down the way it did on the older ones. It held up its speed and it turned real easy, but it was still a little bit sketchy to drive. And what that comes down to is, if you dial your power back a little bit, it's a lot easier to control. These things weigh quite a bit, so if you get one and it's your first car, definitely start with smaller batteries. Don't jump a 6S right in there and run it at full power until you get the skill set. The skill set to drive these takes time to earn, guys. It really does. You can't just hop right in and take off and expect it to be okay. These things weigh quite a bit, and they're really fast, and they can injure kids, they can kill small animals. There's a lot of inertia in these, so they're more of a machine than a toy, but at the same time, properly managed, it's a lot of fun to play with, and that's the whole thing. So let's get on to our 4 questions. Question 1, is this thing fun? Well, yeah, this is fun. The Kratons are a fun platform, but myself personally, I like the longer wheelbase cars. We have the Big Rock 6S sitting up there on the top shelf, and that one really drives planted. It handles really well. The longer wheelbase adds stability to it, and it's just wonderful to see that one run. This one has a slightly shorter wheelbase, so it likes to get up on its rear wheels a little bit more. And if you're into stunting, that's the way to go, guys. It really is, because this one has the speed of a longer wheelbase because it's not as short as the Outcast. That one's more of a stunt truck. This is kind of a nice crossover between the two. Now what we did was we took the Fire Team and we turned that one into a Kraton XL, which added about 1.25 inches to the length, and that one handles a lot better than this one does. But stock out of the box, this runs just like a Kraton would, and you won't be disappointed in that. Are there room for upgrades? Absolutely. I still recommend putting the RPM version 5 front arms on this right away, and as soon as you have any issues with these plastic hub carriers, swap them over to aluminum. You need your strength outside, you need some flexibility right here in the arms, and you need strength inside. This one has all of the EXB stuff in it, so it's pretty tough on the inside, but you need something to take up some of that impact, and that's the job of the arms. As far as fun goes, we're going to give this one 8 out of 10 because we do like the larger wheelbase vehicles, and for us, 8 out of 10 seems fair. And question number 2, is this thing durable? Well, we did have problems with the differential, and it was a really light landing, and the design of those drive cups is just not right for the situation for this machine. I appreciate that Arrma gave it a shot and tried to beef those up and keep those from getting locked down the way they do, but I think they went at it slightly wrong because it didn't take much of an impact for that to be a problem, and it was a costly one. So that's not a good thing. As far as that goes, everything else is pretty good on this. As far as the durability of it goes, everything held up good, but at the same time, the gearing is a real issue for this. It's exceptionally loud, and when you get that kind of noise, it causes wear. If you're getting noise like that, it's going to wear out really fast, and we'll quickly find out what the problem is. But the problem with that is when you get noisy gearing like that, your longevity is way reduced. So you're not going to have nearly the runtime before it needs repair that you should have. So we're going to cost them a point for the gearing being a problem. We're going to cost them a point for the drive cup, and I'm going to cost them a point because I think they could have done better on both. It's a manufacturer error on the drive cup, so we're going to ding them for 2. So this is going to be 7 out of 10 for durability because they could have tested it a little better and found that weakness. It shouldn't have been found in the field. They should have discovered that during testing. And question 3, is this thing worth the money? Well, you know, they want quite a bit for this actually for what it is, and you can get the version 1 for a lot lower price nowadays if you can still find them, and they still need some upgrades. The version 1 needs the same upgrades this one needs. It has basically the same stuff in it. The wing mount, on the other hand, is different, and you can get wheelie bars that attach to those, and for small amounts of upgrade, you can get the same thing for a little bit less money. At least that's my experience with these. Since this one is out, and if I didn't have one, I would say yes, this is worth the money because, like I said, the upgrades aren't all that expensive. For value though, for the cost that you're going to pay for this, we're going to give it 7 out of 10 for value because you could actually get better for the same money, and that makes it 7 out of 10. And number 4, what's the total score here at the channel? Well, this is 22 of 30. And that seems fair for what we've gone through. Keep in mind that we don't get on YouTube and watch all the videos on this to see the problems other people have. We report what this one went through. We tell you what this one did to us, and we report that directly to you so you understand what luck we had with it. Part of durability is driver style. So if we intentionally push these things, we land them on the wings, we land them on the front, we land things hard because durability needs to be tested, and that's how you go about it. However, if we were just out running, we wouldn't have as many cartwheels and stuff because we wouldn't push it quite that hard. But at the same time, we need to know what this can hold up for because that's what these reviews were for. Ours, it came out right at 22 of 30, which is a good thing because it's still in there, but it could be better. So if you haven't already, don't forget to bash that like button and help our content spread. You know, we like helping people with stuff like this, and we enjoy playing with the new tech. It's always a lot of fun. You know, this channel is geared towards helping the community. That's the whole point here. And we love doing this kind of thing when we can find the time. That's always the difficult part. If you've had different experiences with yours, please feel free to get in the comments down below, share it with the community, and help others along the way. For AJ Jam Studios, I'm AJ Sam. Keep bashing.